Yep, it's a chest strap. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave from Chase Summit, and today we're going to be taking a close look at the brand new Garmin HRM Pro chest strap that launched alongside the Garmin Forerunner 745 about a week ago. Garmin did send me this HRM Pro for the purpose of this review, but they did not pay me. This is not a sponsored video, and all of the opinions in this video are my own. Garmin has been manufacturing really high-end premium heart rate monitors for a long time now in the form of the HRM Run, HRM Tri, and HRM Swim, and they all had their own set of features that made them good for certain applications. The Garmin HRM Pro takes little bits of features from each of those and mashes them into one product, which I think is a really great idea. To get the most out of the Garmin HRM Pro chest strap, you're going to want to use something like the Garmin Forerunner 745, 945, Fenix 6, a recent model watch that can support all of the features. If you're interested in the Garmin 745, I've got a whole video about this watch that you can see up here. Just click that. And before we get into this, if you found this video helpful or entertaining, make sure you give me a thumbs up down below. It really means a lot to me. And consider subscribing so you don't miss more videos from me in the future. With that out of the way, we don't really need the box anymore. I've already taken it out of the box. So now let's take a look at the chest strap itself. Oh, it's upside down. Basically, the contents of the box is the chest strap itself. There's not really any charging cables or anything you need to work with it. So this is what you get along with a little manual. All right, let's take a closer look at the hardware itself. The Garmin HRM Pro is actually a really small footprint. Let me get another strap to compare with. This is the Polar H9 chest strap, and you can see that the Garmin has a much smaller footprint on the front of the strap. It's also just about as equal in profile, so it's really low profile. It's very comfortable to wear. I don't have any issues wearing this thing. So Polar and Garmin do this chest heart rate strap thing a lot differently. Basically, Polar makes it so you can unclip your module from the strap, and this is nice if you want to wash the strap separately or you want to replace the strap instead of the whole module. So you can unclip the brains from the strap and just replace the strap, whereas the Garmin, the brains are part of the strap, so you can't replace just the strap with the Garmin HRM Pro. That said, I've never actually bought a replacement strap for any of my heart rate monitors. They last a pretty long time, so I think that's kind of what Garmin's thought is on this. The other benefit to this is that it's extremely low profile and it's very ruggedly built. You can't accidentally unclip this, whereas on the Polar, you can sometimes do this, and when you don't notice that's happening, you'll get a really bad heart rate reading. That simply can't happen on the Garmin. So there's some benefits to this design as well. In terms of the strap itself, it's very comfortable. It's easy to wear. There are two electrode contact points here that actually have kind of a rubberized grip to them, so it doesn't slide down on your chest while you're running. And then the actual stretchy part of the strap is very supple, very stretchy, very easy to use. And then there's the end clip, which is the industry standard for all of these chest straps. Basically loops in, and it's got this little barb on there to keep it from unhooking. When I first pulled this thing out of the box, I was like, whoa, you can't replace the battery on this? That's a little weird. And then I realized you actually have to peel away this rubber cover to get to the battery. Basically, you peel this rubber top away, and then you've got access to 4 small Phillips head screws underneath that. Once you take those out, you have access to the CR2032 battery under here, which is very common for these straps. You can buy them at most drugstores. Like I said before, Garmin has been making chest-based heart rate sensors for a very long time now. They've got the Garmin HRM Run, Tri, and Swim, which are purpose-built for dedicated sport activities, whereas the Garmin HRM Pro is aiming to do all of these activities with one device. The HRM Pro is basically a mashup of features from the HRM Run and HRM Tri, and it can also do some of the things the HRM Swim can do. That said, in this video, I'll be focusing on the running data because that's primarily what I do, but I'll also be talking some of the other features that you might find interesting. The HRM Pro is rated for 5 atmospheres of water resistance, or 50 meters. That means you can take this swimming in open water. Garmin claims you can also go pool swimming with this, but you don't want to do that regularly because the chemicals in the pool can actually damage the device, and that's where the HRM Swim comes in if you're pool swimming every day. But if you're mainly open water and you occasionally go in the pool, the HRM Pro will work just fine. Garmin claims that the battery in the HRM Pro will last up to 1 year with regular use, and that means about 1 hour a day with activity, which is pretty good. I don't think I get that on my Polar H9. That usually lasts about 3 or 4 months, but I use it quite a bit. But we'll see how that goes long term with the HRM Pro. The Garmin HRM Pro has a dual connection design, so you can actually pair two devices with it at a time. This is handy if you run on a treadmill and you want to see the heart rate data on the dashboard as well as your watch and record the data on your watch. It's compatible with ANT+ and Bluetooth technology. That said, if you want the most out of the HRM Pro, you want to use ANT+ to get all of the features turned on. Another unique feature about the HRM Pro is that you can pair this directly to Garmin Connect on your phone without using your watch. And the nice thing about that is you can update the firmware from there, you can change the setting, and you can actually record data directly to the chest strap without using your watch at all and sync it directly to your phone. This is pretty interesting. Basically, for certain activities, all of the data will be recorded to the chest strap itself, and then once your chest strap is able to connect with your phone again, that data will be transferred over to your phone and merged into the activity. You can use this feature for multiple things like wrestling, martial arts, ballet. Basically, anytime you wouldn't want to wear your watch, but you also want to collect heart rate data, this is a great feature to have. I could see this becoming handy like in a climbing gym where you're bouldering or you're on a top rope and you want to get your heart rate data, but a watch just might be in the way. The HRM Pro chest strap will actually collect wellness data as well if you wear this all day. I'm not sure who's going to wear a chest strap all day, but the option is there. The chest strap itself will collect data like steps, calories burned, stairs climbed, all of that data you typically get from your watch on a daily basis. In terms of fit and comfort, the Garmin HRM Pro is super comfortable. Like I said before, it's pretty low profile, it's got a very low footprint, so when it's on my chest, it's really not a big deal. That said, I am not a fan of chest straps. I really hate wearing them, but this is definitely one of the more comfortable ones. That's enough jabber about the specs. Let's take a look at some of the data I've collected with the strap over the past week of running with it. All right, so on this run, we're looking at several devices. We're looking at the Garmin HRM Pro chest strap in purple, the Polar H9 chest strap in red, the Polar Grit X wrist-based sensor in purple, the Garmin Forerunner 745 wrist-based sensor in light blue, and the Coros Apex wrist-based sensor in dark blue. That's a lot of devices. Zooming in here, you can tell they're all doing a pretty decent job here. None are really standing out as like a terrible device, but you can see right at the beginning where things ramp up quickly that the Garmin HRM Pro and Polar H9 are staying right in line with each other. That's a good sign that they're probably accurate because they're both chest-based sensors. Whereas the Grit X is right behind them. It's a little bit closer than the other devices. And then watches like the Coros Apex Pro here is pretty far behind on that startup. And this is very typical for optical heart rate sensors. It takes them a second to catch up. I've noticed that Polar watches have done a pretty good job here with that initial startup, but once most watches are warmed up and they're cruising, they get a little bit better. As you can see though, the Garmin HRM Pro and the Polar H9 are doing a great job at tracking this activity, and all of the watches are doing a pretty decent job with their optical heart rate sensors. When there's variation in the trend line, when like you stop to tie your shoes or something and your heart rate drops and then you start running again and it spikes back up, that's where watches have a really hard time with their optical sensors on your wrist, and that's where the chest straps stand out as being super accurate. And you can see that here. The Polar H9 and the Garmin HRM Pro drop off a cliff here pretty quickly, whereas all three of the watches kind of lag behind a bit. And when I start running again, you can see that both of the heart rate sensors spike right back up very quickly, like I said before, and things stabilize, and they all look pretty good when it stabilizes a bit. But when you drop down again, that's where the two heart rate sensors fall off that cliff very quickly, and all of the watches kind of struggle to stay up with that. So yeah, in terms of heart rate accuracy, I'd say the Garmin HRM Pro is doing a great job, just as good as my Polar H9, and I thought that did great as well. Now we're going to talk about running power. The Garmin HRM Pro has the unique ability, just like the Garmin HRM Run that was previously released, to collect all kinds of running dynamic data, like ground contact time, left-right balance. There's a whole bunch of data being collected, as well as improving your pace and cadence metric. But one thing that I find most important is that it also records running power. Running power is basically the measurement of energy that's exerted by your body when you push off with your foot during running. To test out running power on the Garmin HRM Pro, I've compared it to multiple devices that I have that also collect that running power metric. This includes the Polar Grit X, which has wrist-based running power, the Coros Apex Pro, which also has wrist-based running power, most importantly, the Stride Pod, which goes on your shoe. This has been giving me really consistent, accurate running power data for a while now. So here we go. We've got the Polar Grit X in green, the Stride Pod in purple, the Coros Apex Pro in light blue, and the Garmin HRM Pro in red. Now, when you look at this graph, the first thing you see is that the Polar Grit X has a really high number compared to all of the other devices. But this is not what's important here. Running power has not become an industry standard, and there's not really a way to calibrate any of these devices yet. So the numbers will always be different. One manufacturer is going to be doing it different than another manufacturer. The important thing here is consistency. That said, all of these devices are doing a pretty good job here, including the Grit X, which is way up there there in the numbers, but that's not what matters, like I said. So let's zoom in a little bit here, and you can see at the beginning of the run, they all spiked up pretty consistently right across the board. All of them went right up to speed pretty quick, which is good to see. The HRM Pro does have some wiggles in the first segment here. They kind of don't line up with the other devices, but you know, it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's not crazy bad. And you can see here where I stopped across a street or something that everything dips down. Of course, the other devices have much lower numbers, so they dip down even further. But the HRM Pro is pretty much in line with what we're seeing from the other devices here. Moving on, we see two spikes here where all three devices are seeing this spike. Even the Grit X up here sees a spike right here and here. And the HRM Pro struggles here. It doesn't show that spike that's happening in the other three devices. Moving on, I stopped to walk here for a second. I was probably taking a picture of a watch or something, and everything falls off a cliff just as expected. The Polar Grit X and the HRM Pro are actually quite close to each other here. And then I start running again, and everything spikes right back up the way it should. Here you can see a little spike in data, and all three devices show it. Again, I stop running here and everything drops down. So yeah, definitely usable data coming out of the HRM Pro in regards to running power. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's totally usable. I'm not going to dive too deep on the other running dynamic metrics because they're not that important to me. I really only care about heart rate and running power coming out of this thing. But if you were interested in that data, you get cadence, stride length, vertical oscillation, ground contact time, and balance. Like I said before, if you want to collect all of this running dynamics data, you need to watch like the Garmin Forerunner 745, 945, Fenix 6, basically any Forerunner will do it, but you won't be able to get this information if you pair it to like a Coros or a Suunto or a Polar. There is one quirk about collecting this data. If you don't install the running power data field on your watch, the watch won't actually collect the running power metric, which is kind of strange. It collects all of those other running dynamics except for running power. It'd be nice to see that just built into the watch and not having to download another application to make it work. The Garmin HRM Pro chest strap retails for $129, and I think for that price, it's actually a pretty good value and consider what it can do. I'll throw some links down in the description if you're interested in picking this thing up. Those are affiliate links. They do help support my channel, but they cost you nothing. If you were someone considering picking up the HRM Run or Tri chest strap, I think it's worth just throwing in a bit more money and upgrading to the Pro because you get a ton more features and it can do just about anything you want a chest strap to do. It also feels solid and like it's going to last a pretty long time. So what do you think of the Garmin HRM Pro chest strap? Are you picking one up? Let me know down in the comments below. All right, folks, that's all I've got for today. That's just a quick look at the Garmin HRM Pro chest strap and what I think about it so far. If you found this video helpful or at least entertaining, make sure to give me a thumbs up down below. I really appreciate that. And consider hitting that subscribe button if you want to see more videos from me in the future. All right, I think I'm done now. I'll see you next time.